The story of how a small group of merchants transformed into rulers of one of the richest and most diverse lands in the world begins in the early 1600s. The British East India Company, a trading corporation, arrived on the shores of India, ostensibly to buy spices, silk, and cotton. But what started as trade would soon turn into conquest, and the richest jewel of the East would slip through the fingers of empires and into the grasp of a foreign power. In the beginning, the British presence in India was fragile. They shared ports with the Portuguese, Dutch, and French, each vying for dominance in the lucrative spice trade. The Mughal Empire, ruling vast territories with immense wealth, was still strong. Initially, the British were content to trade peacefully, learning the languages, customs, and politics of the subcontinent. But trade alone would not satisfy their ambition. The turning point came not from a single battle, but from clever manipulation, alliances, and patience. The East India Company learned to exploit the divisions among Indian rulers. The empire was not a monolith. It was a patchwork of kingdoms, sultanates, and princely states, often at war with one another. The British inserted themselves as advisors, bankers, and suppliers of weapons, slowly gaining influence over the outcomes of conflicts. One of the most critical moments came at the Battle of Plassey in 1757. Robert Clive, a British officer with the East India Company, faced the forces of Siraj ud-Dowlah, the Nawab of Bengal. Outnumbered and seemingly at a disadvantage, Clive used a web of bribery and betrayal to turn key allies of the Nawab against him. In a single day, the British secured control over Bengal, a province so wealthy it could fund the expansion of the empire for decades. From there, the conquest spread like wildfire. India's vast resources, cotton, indigo, tea, and opium, were redirected to British markets. The company, now functioning as a private army and government combined, expanded its territories through wars and treaties. The Marathas, the Mysore kingdom, and eventually almost every princely state had to contend with this growing power. Yet the British invasion was not just about wealth. Strategic ambition played a key role. India was at the heart of the Indian Ocean trade routes, connecting Europe with the Spice Islands, China, and the Middle East. Controlling India meant controlling trade, influence, and the projection of power across Asia. It was a prize that could not be ignored. The local population often resisted fiercely, from peasant uprisings to organized revolts. But British military technology, discipline, and political cunning consistently gave them the upper hand. They introduced modern firearms, disciplined regiments, and created an intelligence network that few rivals could match. By the mid-19th century, the East India Company had essentially become the government of India, collecting taxes, enforcing laws, and dictating the fates of millions. The final step in this story came after the Revolt of 1857, often called India's First War of Independence. The rebellion shook the foundations of British rule, yet the response was swift and brutal. The East India Company was dissolved, and the British Crown took direct control of India. What began as trade had become empire, stretching from the deserts of Rajasthan to the rice fields of Bengal, from the mountains of the north to the coasts of the south. But why did Britain succeed where others had struggled? The answer lies in a combination of timing, strategy, and opportunism. They exploited divisions, mastered diplomacy and deception, and wielded technology and wealth to their advantage. They understood that controlling India was not just about defeating armies, it was about controlling minds, loyalty, and the flow of resources. By the 20th century, India was called the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. But the story also left a legacy of resistance, resilience, and a nation poised to reclaim its destiny. The British invasion of India was never inevitable. It was a story of ambition meeting opportunity, of cunning meeting chaos, and of a foreign power turning trade into empire. And it stands as one of history's most profound examples of how strategy, patience, and ruthless calculation can change the fate of a continent forever.